G'day guys and gal. Another day, another glorious fixing the end times video. We aren't actually too far off completing this series, which means we aren't actually too far off releasing the entire fixed end times lore. This has been a pretty serious undertaking and it has really tickled my creative pickle, but I'm glad we're getting through it. If you're unaware of what actually happened during the abomination that was the end times, I have a video explaining it all. This video also nearly got my YouTube account banned for some reason, so yeah, enjoy it while it's still up. So far we've covered the Elves, Lizardmen, Dawei, Skaven, Eastern Kingdoms, Southern Realms, and now we're covering the Green Boys and the Ogres. I'm combining Greenskins and Ogres as their end times lore is closely wound together. Generally I release them in order of races that require most fixing. The Elves lore was completely shot, so they came first, whilst the Greenskins had a pretty good time overall, so they weren't really a priority. Well, I guess I mean Grimgor had a really good time. The writers basically forgot that there were more orcs in the world than just Grimgor. Don't get me wrong, Grimgor is the best, but forgetting to even mention what happens to Skarsnik is a genuine crime. The same rules follow as the other videos. I cannot change major plot points, only minor details or subplots in order to justify the major plot points or just to make them more tolerable, or even at times enjoyable. I also won't go into the ending of my version of the end times as I want to do that when the final video comes out. Before we get started, I just wanted to quickly talk about my streaming. I stream 3 times a week, and you may have seen me do one of these on YouTube. The streams are great. I fail backflips, I take my shirt off, I get blackout drunk, and I just be a genuine menace. 2 of those streams are on DLive per week, so if you want to get in on the fun, then please consider chucking us a follow on there. I'm trying to get to 1,000 followers to feed my ego and flex on kids. I also heard that at 1,000 followers, e-thoughts begin taking interest in you, so help a brother out. Next stream will be me fighting Chaos as Eltharion in Total War Warhammer 2, taking place at 4 PM Washington DC time, 9 PM UK time, or 6 AM Aussie time, just after Legend of Total War is wrapping up his stream. As I am a lore YouTuber, I like to do things lore friendly. This is a Greenskins video, so when there needs to be a wah, there's gonna be a fucking wah! I know some people, well, everyone, doesn't like spontaneously loud wahs, so as a favour to you, to save you from some ear rape, I will instead play an audio file of a wah. Best of both worlds. Let's get into it. The Greenskins canon end times starts off promising, with Wurtzag being shown that Gork and Mork will have 2 different avatars, Grimgor as Gork and Skarsnik as Mork. As Gork and Mork are displayed as equal in power, one being cunningly brutal and the other being brutally cunning, you would expect this to mean that Skarsnik and Grimgor would become equals, or at least have a somewhat equal impact on the fate of the Greenskins. What ends up happening is Skarsnik gets his ass whooped by the Skaven, and we spend the rest of the time jerking off Grimgor. Now, I like jerking off Grimgor just as much as the next guy, but there are a lot of cool Greenskin characters and it just seems like a waste to only focus on one. In saying this, I am okay with the canon intro of Gork and Mork choosing their avatars, and Wurtzag embarking on a quest to inform them that they are now demigods, because apparently they wouldn't notice the power boost that they would obviously receive. The canon narrative then briefly focuses on Skarsnik, who teams up with the Skaven to try push into Karak 8 Peaks and beat Belagar. Now Skarsnik is a night goblin and the avatar of Mork, and the Skaven are, well, Skaven, so this temporary alliance goes to shit and the 2 factions ends up fighting. Skarsnik's forces are beaten and Gobbler is killed in a really stupid way. Like, he eats a Skaven Beastmaster who cuts his way out of him. Like, yes, it was sneaky of Skarsnik to bribe the Dawei's ogre mercenaries led by Goldfag Maneater to betray the Dawei, but even that plot point feels clunky. In my version, the 2 forces should still betray each other, but Skarsnik should have the upper hand in the game of betrayal. As the Dwarven line is beginning to crumble and retreat, Skarsnik lets out the signal. Night Goblin fanatics instantly turn on the Skaven they're fighting with, tearing their forces to shreds with their fanatical rage, whilst explosive squigs smash into the Skaven artillery, blowing up dozens of warpstone machines in an instant. Skarsnik throws his poison javelin, impaling the nearby warlord Festic, who was shocked. Not at the Greenskin betrayal, no. Himself and Queek had their own betrayal ready. It was the timing. It was bold. The Dawei still held the peaks, and it would be considered easier to beat them as a united force. But this is the avatar of Mork, and his timing could not have been more perfect. Despite being outnumbered, the Greenskins look to be getting the upper hand. Queek falls into a deadly rage as he cuts his way towards Skarsnik, the avatar of Mork himself slaughtering the rats around him with his elite Night Goblin bodyguard. Queek and his Stormvermin charge Skarsnik and his Night Goblins, and a vicious melee ensures. For a time, neither side can get the upper hand, as Skarsnik fights in a duel against Queek, while their forces slaughter each other. But in the surrounding battle, it becomes apparent that there are just too many Skaven. The goblins begin to rout as hell-pit abominations, rat ogres, doomwheels, and other foul monsters and machines join the fray, tearing through the greenskin hordes. Only the Arachnarok spiders, night goblins, and Golgfag's ogres hold any form of line, but they themselves are falling to the vermintide. The distraction, however, does allow the Dawe to pull back and evacuate more of its civilians, whilst Golgfag withdraws his troops, deciding that he and his mercenaries had done enough and would likely face extermination if they stayed. Skarsnik sees this as well, his own bodyguard falling to the more numerous and better armed storm vermin. Eventually he backs away from Queek, a dozen blades pointing towards him. See, whilst Mork is a powerful god to have your back, Gork is the one which would help you fight out of these situations. Suddenly, Gobbler tears through a pile of dead bodies and smashes into the storm vermin, tearing them to shreds. Skarsnik sees this as his chance and he cuts a hole through the Skaven line and sprints away to freedom. He turns to see Gobbler still fighting and calls to him. His beast, his friend, turns to him and they lock eyes for a moment. Knowing that if Gobbler runs now, he will likely escape, however Skarsnik will not. His small goblin legs no match for the Skaven that would pursue him. With a heavy heart and a phantom tear, Skarsnik turns away and keeps running, as Gobbler throws himself back into the Skaven. He tears through a score more rats before Queek launches into the air and stabs his blade through the loyal Squig's brain, killing him. As you see in my version, it maintains that the Skaven beat the Greenskins, but also does Skarsnik and Gobbler more justice. That whilst they dealt more damage to the Skaven than they received, the Vermintide overwhelmed them in the end. This also marks the end of Skarsnik's journey in canon, and the writers literally just forgot he existed for the rest of the end times. This sucks because whilst Grimgor becomes the focus, his army was mainly just orcs and black orcs. Goblins become irrelevant despite being a force to be reckoned with. This is where we change that. The next bit of this will all be new lore for Skarsnik, and the rest of the neglected gobbos. As Skarsnik retreats from Karak 8 Peaks, he begins to wander the Badlands. His army crushed and his dream of taking the peaks dead along with it. To make it worse, Gobbler, his closest friend, died saving his life. After days of letting the sun beat down more and more on him, he sees a masked figure approach. Wurtzag. The prophet had come. Before Skarsnik could speak a word, Wurtzag places a hand on his head and shows him violent and intense visions from Mork, visions of the world burning from chaos, and the coming to an end. His role is defined. Whilst Grimgor would head east with his orcs, Skarsnik would gather the goblins to him and head to the south. For the next few months, Skarsnik would let out the call of to join him, Wurtzag remaining by his side for the time. Whilst tens of thousands came to his banner, he had just suffered a mighty defeat at 8 Peaks and found his reputation wanting. Sure, he could go fight all the other goblin around him, but he would lose countless goblins in the battles and isn't guaranteed to win all those wars. How very Mork of him. So instead he leads a campaign of sabotage and deception. Teams of his sneakiest gits assassinate the gobbo leaders of each of the surrounding tribes at night, with Skarsnik personally taking the heads of the toughest around. By morning, Skarsnik enters the encampment of each tribe, whose leader he slays, flanked by 2 rogue idols, manifestations of the will of Gork and Mork themselves, and he declares the intent and the will of Mork. Every single tribe pledges themselves to him that he encounters, until he's becomes one of the greatest ever mustered, second only to Grimgor's. With his army nearing completion, Wurtzag directs him to the mountains, and tasks him with finding a long-lost legendary greenskin hero, the final piece in his puzzle. Wurtzag then departs, seeking out Grimgor to help him guide him on the path to Gork. Skarsnik leads his army into the mountains, ripping through the Skaven forces there and crushing multiple clans to dust. The Skaven, weakened from their war against the Dawe, as well as faced with the might of a gigantic greenskin army led by the avatar of one of their gods. He eventually arrives at the peak and the mountain he was told about by Wurtzag. In it was a cave. Skarsnik enters, finding piles of bone of every known creature. A hulking beast approaches him. It was Grom the Paunch. In canon, after Eltharion beat Grom's armies in Tor Yivris, he basically vanishes from the lore, with one writer saying that eventually Eltharion catches up to him and violently tortures him to death. In my version, however, Altharion does indeed catch him, and does indeed torture him and mentally breaks him, deciding to keep him alive as it was crueler to do so than put him out of his misery. Grom charges at Skarsnik in a blind rage, swinging his axe at him time and time again, Skarsnik dodging each blow. Imagine the fight between the Mountain and the Viper. Skarsnik yells at Grom to stop, to join his and bring the world to his knees by its side, but Grom is stuck in a trance, his mind still broken from the horrors of the vengeful Elf Lord. Finally, Skarsnik sees an opening and lunges, impaling Grom with his spear. Grom staggers and Skarsnik speaks in a voice not his own, the voice of Mork, commanding Grom. Greenskin flows from Skarsnik into Grom's mind, healing its fractured state. Grom calms down as Skarsnik removes his spear from Grom's stomach, the wound quickly healing due to Grom's regeneration. He pledges himself to Skarsnik and Mork, grateful for his mind being healed, and also acknowledging Skarsnik's victory over him via their duel. With Grom now as his second in command, Skarsnik ravages the Skaven in the Badlands. Multiple elite assassins are dispatched to kill Skarsnik, but all fail miserably. Dozens of them are hung by their entrails at the front of Skarsnik's encampment, to a point where the assassins refuse to even try, as it's literally just a death sentence. By this time, the Tomb Kings have been beaten by Nagash, and the Dawei have been smashed by the Skaven, with High King Thorgrim already killed heroically saving his people. Skarsnik knows what he must do. He travels north, smashing through and massacring the Skaven occupying the southern realms, and setting up shop in the mountains surrounding Athel Loren. The world would burn, but chaos needed to burn first. Hence Skarsnik approaches the forest, and prepares to parley with the forces of order. That wraps up my version of Skarsnik's lore. It gives him a big role in the Badlands, a place where Grimgor spends next to no time in during the end times. It also brings Grom back into the fray, and involves the rest of the goblin hordes. Gork and Mork enjoy the world as it is, it gives them plenty of fun and war. Gork is too obsessed with war to realise that if they want the fun to continue, chaos is their target, whilst Mork, being brutally cunning, knows this and would use Skarsnik as a tool to destroy the Skaven in the south. His ultimate act would then be getting Skarsnik to parley with the forces of order, and join them in the final battle of Mindheim, which I will detail in my upcoming The End Times Were Actually Good video. Skarsnik's army would also go along with this, as their leader is basically their god, has the approval of the legend Grom, and will be satisfied with the fun they would get from fighting their way through endless Skaven hordes. Now on to Grimgor and the Ogre Kingdoms. For the most part, Grimgor's end times lore is solid, so there isn't actually too much to fix here. I'll give you guys a snapshot of it because I'll assume most of you haven't read the End Times books or looked into the lore much. He starts off by crumping shitloads of Skaven, before they eventually fuck off to the surface to begin their invasion of the world. This drives him to crush Greenskin champion after Greenskin champion, assimilating their under his banner. The Hobgoblins fall to him, as do the Neck Snapper tribes. Literally every single named orc either gets killed by Grimgor or ends up sucking his ass. Borgit Facebeater, the only orc that Grimgor respects as a near equal, is present during this as Grimgor's second in command. After putting together the biggest orc in existence, Grimgor assaults the Great Bastion, engaging in a three-way battle against the Chaos Dwarves and Cathay. Grimgor wins and ends up chasing the Dragon Emperor as he sees him as a worthy opponent. In canon, the Dragon Emperor flees the world and Grimgor accidentally ends up in Nippon, but in my version, the Dragon Emperor makes a stand against Grimgor, who beats him in a duel, but leaves him alive after he proves he is the best. Grimgor then goes back to the west for greater battles and encounters the Ogre Kingdoms. Throughout all of this, Grimgor has been getting stronger and stronger, not just from his victories making him bigger, but also from the winds of beast fusing with him when Teclis undid the vortex. The Ogre Kingdoms had left the Mountains of Moor at this point as it had erupted pretty badly. In canon, the encounter between Grimgor and the Ogres goes as you would expect. They see him as the incarnate of beasts, as well as the avatar of Gork and the Great Moor, their god. As I said, lots of power-ups. Most of them swear fealty to Grimgor, however Grease's Goldtooth, at the time the self-declared king of the Ogres, challenges Grimgor for control of his fuck-off massive. This goes about as well as can be expected for Greasus, who finds himself sufficiently crumped, and by that mean, he got absolutely murdered. Something I would change here is that Skrag attempts to kill Wurzag, and is in turn killed by Grimgor. I think killing Greasus to make a point of Grimgor being better than the Ogres is enough, and that Skrarg should continue fighting with Grimgor. Golgfag and Brug the Gutsman are also present here and are serving Grimgor, so Games Workshop did actually a pretty good effort into pulling the Ogre Kingdoms into the fray and getting their named characters involved. The canon continues well here, with Grimgor leading his to attack the Chaos Dwarf Kingdoms. Millions of Black Orc slaves here there are rising in rebellion and joining Grimgor's already retardedly large army. Between Grimgor, millions of Orc slaves, and the Ogres, and Gork and Mork, the Chaos Dwarf Empire gets crushed, with her Schutt getting seemingly killed by Gork and Mork. Once again, I don't mind this. I won't go into the details too much here, as I'm saving that for my Fixing the End Times Chaos Dwarf video that is in the works, but the Chaos Dwarves fight well, and their named characters are given good send-offs. There's even one scene here where Borgit Facebeater gets a bit cocky and challenges Grimgor to a fight, ending in Borgit's death. Grimgor then later reflects on how he misses Borgit. I was thinking about changing that in my lore, but I actually think it's quite good, and it is actually kind of funny how he nonchalantly misses the orc who rose against him and that he violently killed. Maybe we could add a scene here where it explicitly shows the death of her Schutt, as the Chaos Dwarves are massacred, but not really needed to make any real improvements. Grimgor and his would then get teleported to Middenheim by Lilia's sacrifice to take a part in the final battle of the end times. One thing here to fix is that not all of these orcs were teleported, which is dumb. Let's teleport all the orcs please. Thank you. There's a decent amount of end times lore to fix for the Greenskins during the final battle, but as I have said, I'm saving that for the final video of this series. All up, the only real crime towards the Greenskins end times was Skarsnik. The riders threw Grimgor around the world, proving he was the best, time and time again, which I am all for. And that does us for today guys, fixing the Greenskins end times. If you enjoyed this video and want to support the channel, consider clicking the subscribe button, and then click the real subscribe button. If you really like the channel, then only $1 on Patreon gives you access to a boatload of Warhammer hentai, including Greenskin hentai, so yay. Also, $10 or more will mean that you get to see the upcoming hentai calendar without having to buy the physical copy. So far, I've spent over $1,000 on it, and the quality is amazing. Join the Discord for more memes, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.